Just want to wait a little bit, let the interwebs do their thing. There we go. And we're live. And my name is Judah McNeil, and this is new season of Ramble Source. And today I'm pleased to have a real special guest and close friend, my partner in crime for it was like for a while, 2 years. We'll have to remember. Diego Espino, and we'll talk more about that. But let me hit the intro. Flows, and today I am here with my good friend, longtime friend, uh, Diego. And Diego and I go way back. So, how many years
Way
did
back.
we work together? Well, we don't go. It's
I
funny
think it
because
was
it
2 years.
feels like we go way back, but it was 2 years, right?
Together in the same school, but then yeah, it was the
Yeah, that's right.
third. There was a third year that we still did some activities together in different schools.
That's
But
right. Yeah, we were. I mean, we were still friends, but as like partners in the same office.
yeah,
It was about 2 years. We worked at Michelle Clark, a school in the what was the I guess it'd be the southwest
Austin. That was the Austin neighborhood. It was the west
Austin neighborhood,
side.
west
West
side, yeah,
side. Yeah.
of Chicago. And wow, it was quite an experience, and I particularly enjoyed having you as a partner. I feel like we can make like one of those buddy crime
I think so too.
those buddy crime films with like me and you. But before we get too much into it, uh, one thing I like to do now as a Ramble Source in a Ramble Source interview is to together take a deep breath. I call it the simultaneous sigh as we get on the same page, and as we learned in the BAM program how important it is to breathe and to breathe deeply. And so, if we could do that
Right.
by first blowing out all our air, taking in the deepest breath we've ever taken, and letting go.
Right.
Welcome, brother. Good
Right.
to
Good
see
to
you
be here,
again.
man. Yeah, it's been so long. It's been so long. It's nice. I know we talked about doing an interview like 2 years ago, or I don't even know.
I've always wanted to, yeah, interview you, and I just we just never really made it. I guess I just never asked. It's like one of those things. So, for those of you who don't know, Diego is a counselor. He has his master's degree, I think, from University of Illinois, Champaign
Yes,
Urbana, right?
Champagne Urbana. Yep.
And you are so we work together in the with youth guidance in the
Yes, sir.
BAM program, becoming a MAM program, and you went on to work with what is the place you work with now?
Urban wellness working now. Yeah.
Urban Wellness, and you're one of the you're. Tell me a little bit about what you do there. What is your
Well,
position?
it's just I'm a therapist there. I do couples and individual therapy. It's been great. Couples been an interesting journey to do therapy with couples. But overall, it's
Hmm.
just you know kind of laid back. We have our shared office. It's a group practice, so there's like 6 offices in my space. And yeah, clients come. It's really laid back. We have
Hmm.
coffee, tea for the guests and things like that for the
Nice.
clients. But yeah, I really enjoy it.
Well, and I'm kind of bearing the lead. One of the things that makes I don't know. I think one of the most interesting things, although there's a lot more of this interesting about you, is the fact that you're blind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm blind. It's funny because sometimes people hear, "Well, you're blind," and then they're like, "Well, you can't see anything," and I'm like, "No, there's spectrums, right? Like I have some sight. I'm able to see some shadows, some light perception. Um, but, but yeah, I mean, I generally begin to say I'm blind now because then I start. It's kind of hard to get into the whole explanation. But I wasn't
Mm.
at some point, right? As I mean, as you know, I started losing my vision at 16.
You weren't, yeah, you weren't born blind. It
No.
was now what was the disease or
Yeah, it's a hereditary eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So it's uh, I guess basically it's like a degeneration of your retina,
Hmm.
and it could be it's gradual, and it can happen at it's there's a lot of like it's unpredictable, right? Like there's people who start
Hmm.
losing it at 16. There's people who start losing it at their 20s, and I think more regularly, more what's seen a little bit more is people start losing it like around their 30s.
Hmm.
But well, when I started losing mine at 16, obviously at 16, I thought it was the end of the world. But as I got older, I mean, I'm 30 now. I'm like, thank God it happened at 16. you
Well,
know,
why in particular were you glad that it happened at 16 rather than later? Just because you had
well,
time to get used to it before you jumped into your career or what?
yeah, of course. Like, I think at 16, we're just so much, I mean, you're so much more able to adapt to things, right? To technology, to new
Mm.
things, to kind of like take ownership of like what is it that I want to do. I can only imagine people who, I mean, I've met some people who start losing their vision at 30 and they don't well, sometimes it's a big career change that they have to do at 30, or even that to do what they're currently like working in, but also at the same time need to learn like basically life skills, right? Whether it's learning braille, learning how to use excessive technology, um, adaptive
Mm.
technology, as I use, right? And there's all these other
Mhm.
aspects of like your identity that you just lose, right? And if I think it's just
Mm.
really big to lose it at 30, or later
Yeah.
on in your years than when you're young and you're like, okay, I'm not saying it wasn't hard. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't take that away, but it was just the sense of like it was before I decided to go to college.
Mm.
I wanted to be a chef at some point, which I can still cook and I do that. But I was able to kind of think back, okay, what's a career in which I was already good at like talking to people, I had good social skills and things like that, and so I was like, you know what, I don't need my eyes to do therapy. I can just listen. I can listen really well, and I can you know teach. I can talk.
Mhm.
And aside from that too, for me a big part was like I need to go to college, right? Because
Mm.
my vision's probably going to get worse, and nobody can take away my education and
Mhm.
shortly thereafter my experience, right?
Yeah. Well, and so just to kind of process that, there, that's one thing I hadn't really thought about is, or maybe before when we talked about it, I had, but just thinking about it now, losing part of your identity.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that would be huge at 30 because you, like you said, you've built up so much of your identity, and it's like you have to say goodbye to it in a
Hmm.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
What
It's
was
yeah.
what was the biggest thing you lost?
Well,
Like as far as your identity?
as far as my identity, I think the biggest thing I lost was, my I was the biggest soccer fanatic, right? I
Mm.
played it, since I was little.
Mm.
I would play in the streets. When I would go to Mexico, I bonded. It was my way of bonding with people, right? I can, hey, let's just pick up a soccer game. We can just go to the park, play with other people. I was in the school soccer team as well.
Mm.
And so soccer just has been all my life, right? It was the way in which you know, uh, I interacted with my brother, connected with him. my dad, sports as well, basketball, but I mainly say soccer because that was my main sport.
Yeah.
But again, that was the way of, if I think about like as a man in the Latino culture, when we would go to the parks and maybe my culture as well, our family at the time would, Mondays we would go play soccer, Sundays we would go play basketball, and, sometimes just the cousins would play soccer, um,
Mm,
while our parents played basketball. But, so like losing that, I lost it in many different ways, right? Like my
mm,
family and my friends, right? And so it was like, okay, well, what else can I do, right? And I mean, to be honest, like that was it was one of like the most difficult things that I, had to learn to cope with and just grieve, as well as
mm,
like learn to find something, not necessarily to replace it, but to kind of like put in place, like I guess it makes it the same, it's the same thing, replace it, but not exactly, right? But it was like,
yeah.
for example,
To
I
take its place, not
to
replace, but take its place.
take its place, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
or like the
Yeah.
adjustment, right? Like I could adjust in
Yeah.
many other parts of my life, like for example, school, yeah, I can use large print, I can learn braille, I can hear things through audio, right? Like that was
Mm,
easy. But like
mm,
soccer at the time, I mean, now I have a sport, but at the time I was like, what am I going to do?
yeah. Yeah. Okay. I remember you talking about soccer being one of the biggest things for you. Um,
Hmm.
and I could see how if you had been 30 and been a star soccer player and this had happened, like that would have been devastating.
Hmm.
Whereas at 16 it was devastating, but you still had time to reshape your like you said, to trans to
Well,
to put in place
adjust or
other
just,
things. Yeah, adjust.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it was my excuse me, it was my the summer after my sophomore year. And
Mm,
so, that junior year was like the year I was going to be in varsity, which I didn't get to be. But
mm,
also, I remember I would tell my teachers, because I was like in honors classes and things like that, and AP, advanced placement classes, and I was like, I'm gonna quit. Like, what's the point of doing anything? That whole,
mm,
I was, depressed, yes. But I was like, I'm gonna quit.
mm.
Like, if I can't play soccer, like, well, what's the point of doing anything else, right?
Yeah.
As a youth would
Yeah.
sometimes think. But I'm grateful that I had great teachers.
Mm,
And one of them was the swim coach, and she was like, Diego, like, you should join swimming. And
mm.
she's like, I did enjoy swimming. I wasn't so good at it, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna. No, actually, first I tried wrestling, which was not my thing. Like I enjoyed the workouts, but the grappling, like I was 6 foot something, but I was a soccer guy. My legs were strong, my hands were weak. Like my grip, I was like, oh my god, like this like 5'5" dude is like beating me. But it's like, yeah, I mean, I mean, props to them, right? But that's their sport, right?
Right.
It wasn't mine. And so, I
Yeah.
joined swimming, and I love that because I mean, I had
Ah,
really strong
yeah.
legs, so like, that just powered me through.
Mm,
But I was really grateful for that because they were really just welcoming in that sport, and it also gave me kind of like a different sport vibe. Swimming was very
mhm,
individual when we
mm.
did like, one-on-one races. But then there was also that like I don't know if you're familiar with swimming, but then there was also those, what are those called? Well, it was like four
The
against four
relay?
relays, yeah, relay races,
Yeah.
and that was really
Mm.
cool too. So I'm glad I got that opportunity, and I learned how to swim better and not be scared of the deep end.
Yeah, that must have been very it's daunting to go into the deep end as someone who can't like you can't really like I
Hmm.
mean it's hard enough not being able to feel the bottom, like not
Yeah,
being able to really gauge how far you are from the
how
edge and
far?
stuff like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
But since then, uh I want to get into your education, but before that, since we're already talking about sports, I want to talk more about your discovery of goal ball. I think it's
Global.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, goal ball is, kind of like what I said earlier about like soccer was the longest thing that I just couldn't find, like after
Mm,
I graduated college in 2016. I I want to say like I found my job. I was happy in many different places of my life, but I
yeah,
still felt like something was missing. Like
yeah.
I've always been an athlete, and so that was like, there was a part of me that was like, why, like I'm missing something, and for the longest I just couldn't find it, and
Like swimming didn't
no,
fulfill that
no,
need.
it didn't fulfill it, because I only did swimming in high school. And then, once I went
Mm,
to college, I would go swim in the pool here and there, but it wasn't like there was no competitiveness, right? It's like
right.
that thing that makes you like, yeah, I want to work out because I have this goal and I want to win at the next game. Like it was just more
Mm,
like I kind of used them as like a health thing, and being in the water relaxed me, as it has those
yeah,
properties as well, but it
yeah.
wasn't something that filled me, as you say, right?
Mm. The goal.
Um,
So what is goal? Goal ball from? Of course, I've seen you play, and it's pretty amazing. It's like soccer. I've actually felt that you had me feel the ball because it's a thick, heavy ball that you throw it. So
so so
a
there's
goal.
a yeah
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah,
there's a 9-meter goal from so I guess if you think about it, we play in like a gym, so inside like
about the
I
size
guess
of a basketball
basketball,
court, right?
what's the side of
Yeah.
basketball court, but the court I think is more of like the size of a volleyball court.
Mm,
But so on each end, you have two goals. They're about like 9 meters long by about, so basically, it's all the back line, and then it's about, in terms of height, maybe 4 feet ish around there.
mm,
Um, and then there's the ball that it weighs about 3 pounds. It's the size of a
yeah.
basketball, and it has like 3 or 4 bells inside. And so it's dead weight, so it doesn't have air in it.
Mm,
And so obviously everybody who's playing, it's three against three, and we're all blindfolded, right? As I said earlier, there's a spectrum in blindness, and so to make it everything fair, everybody's blindfolded.
mhm,
And basically you just have to block the ball. Imagine like dodgeball, but the opposite, right? You got to block the ball so it doesn't go into your goal with any part
mhm,
of your body, pretty much. And of course, there's rules. Kind of hard to explain all the rules, but one of the things is the ball has to bounce. There's like you can divide the court into three sections, and the ball has to hit the two first sections before it gets to the third. Um,
mm,
you can roll it, kind of like bowling, or you can
mhm,
bounce it a little bit. It just depends on what kind of player you are, how you throw, and where you practice. And then on the floor, to guide ourselves, the court, all throughout the court, it's outlined with tape. And underneath the tape, there's a string, like a thick string. So you can feel it with your
mm.
hands, you can feel it with your feet. And that way,
I
that's
didn't
how
know
you
about
kind
that.
of, yeah, that's how you know where you are in the court. So it's a quiet game for the uh, people who are seeing the game, the viewers.
Mhm,
They have to be
mhm,
quiet while the game is in play. But then, like the people in the court, we're always talking, communicating, because that's how we know where we are. That way, we
mhm.
don't crash into each other. Um,
I'm
but
gonna
yeah,
play a. I'm gonna play a clip really quick. Well, if I can, it won't let me. Here we go. Of just uh, you probably so
go
this
ahead.
it's just showing a couple of teams. This is the Paralympic Sports A to Z goal ball. It's just on YouTube.
Yeah,
Um, just so people can get a sense of what it's like.
yeah,
It's just it's interesting to just see how people react as the ball comes by. I forgot that it had that there was bells in the ball.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's like when I came into it, when I heard about it, I didn't
Mhm.
realize how big it was in the community.
Yeah.
I we play in the cool part about it is like we go to tournaments in different parts of the different states like Arizona, New Jersey, where else? The main one takes place in Indiana. That's where the USA Paralympic team trains. And
Mhm.
we've actually got, I mean, we play against them too because they play in different, I guess, regional teams, and so it's pretty cool to play against like top. I mean, people who do this as their living, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's an intense sport. I need
Are
to
you
say.
still playing these days?
Yes, I'm still playing.
How many times, like, so what is the sort of schedule? Like, does it take up a lot of your life?
Um, mm, I practice it. We practice for like 2 hours on Thursday nights.
Mm.
Friday nights we have a practice. And then we're starting up like every third Saturday. We're gonna have Saturday practices. So
Okay.
I try to do what I can, and also help a lot of like newer players.
Mhm.
But that's like I tell my at my job, I tell them, I'm like, that's my mental health. I'll give you any other day, but just leave me Thursday
That's your
nights because
mental health
that's
day.
that's
Yeah.
that's that's where I need. That's what I need. If not, I can't function.
Well, how have you guys been doing as far as like, have you guys been winning or?
It's been an interesting year. Well, I was a bit injured for like most of the season last year or this year, and
Mm.
so, but we've been doing all right. We got second place in two different tournaments this year, but yeah, we're hoping to get better, and hopefully we can get that. It sucks too because we lost both of them. We lost by one goal.
Oh
So it's like we got second place by
no.
one goal, and that's just the worst. And one of them we were winning
Ah,
by at 1.4 to 1, and then it just like got flipped. But yeah, it's
ah,
but it's good. Needless to say, it's fun. Yeah, it's competitive, but I also recognize that like I tell people, I'm like, I only practice for the most part Thursday nights, and there's people who practice,
okay.
you know, weekly, and I mean, or more than once a week. So I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
makes sense. But it's fun. I really, really
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Well, good. Well, I want to sort of segue into
Yeah.
some get a little deeper into who you are, because I know you as somebody who has, I guess, the theme I told you, the theme was breaking boundaries. And I know
Yeah.
you someone as, I mean, just talking about this, the idea of someone that is blind getting their master's degree, and you know being a successful star in a sport, and being a counselor. All of these things have been groundbreaking and, well, particularly boundary breaking, I would say. Wouldn't you? That there were boundaries you had, the hurdles obviously that you had to get over.
Hmm.
But tell me a little bit more about you as somebody who overcomes sort of maybe stereotypes.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think a lot of my mindset, when I was in at the when I finished high school and went into college,
Hmm.
I refused to be put in this box of, Diego, you're a person who's blind, right? And
Hmm.
maybe, you're going to work with people who are blind, right?
Hmm.
And there was a part of me that was like, I know I can do that. I know I can
Yeah.
work with people who are blind because, yeah, I can relate to them or they can relate to me, or, that's to me seemed like, yeah, I can do that, but I didn't want to, right? I was like, I think it's also important for people like me, people who are blind or who have some kind of disability, to be out there in the more like mainstream, I guess, workplace where other
Hmm.
people can see you, and maybe break some stereotypes. And so I can tell you there was many times during college where like some of my counselors or advisors would say like, have you thought about doing rehab services? Have you thought about doing rehab services? And I'm like, no, I'm doing social work. I'm
Mhm.
doing mental health, and I want to work in schools, right? That was my first kind of thought. I didn't want to do school social
What
work necessarily.
what is rehab services? Like, tell me more. What is that? Why
Well,
do people want to do that?
rehab services is basically a person who you kind of have like it's a counselor who helps people who have either some kind of disability. Sometimes it could be helping like veterans. It could be helping just. I had a rehab counselor, and it's
Mhm.
people who kind of like assist you with those resources that maybe the government gives, or even some skills, right? Like
Yeah.
how to have some social skills for interviews, things like that. Um, and I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot more, right?
Mhm.
But that's typically, you know, it's a great thing. I don't
Mhm.
diminish it, but like for me, I was like, that I know I can do, right? But I was like, I
Mhm.
want to do, other things as like, and when I say be like in the mainstream, it's like I mean, I guess, as you kind of like got to see, I
Mhm.
was the only blind person in the schools that, be walking around, or like when we would go on field trips with students, or,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm sure there's others. There has to be others. I want to hope. But again, it was like and I didn't do it exactly like for this, like I don't know if you remember, but like one of our students from like Michelle Clark, he was actually one of your students who like kind of shared. We were sitting down one day, and he was like, "Mr. Diego, like, I see you typing on your computer, and I see that you just go around and you're walking around everywhere, and I never thought about a blind person like that before." And that's part why, right? Because I'm like, no, you tend to see somebody walking in the street with a cane, and you just
Yeah.
assume like, oh, and I tell people like, no,
Yeah.
like there's people who can do different things, and so that's, I mean, that was one example, but I mean, I've heard that other places. But again,
Mhm.
I was like, no, like I want to be out there, and I want to change the view of people who are blind, and also for myself, right? Like I know I can give support in that space.
Mhm. Well, I like that. What do you? Well, real quick before we go on, I'm
Go
gonna
ahead, yeah.
switch. We're gonna switch from Twitter. And for those of you who are watching on Twitter, you can find the rest of this on Not a Show on YouTube, or on. You can go to the full interview. Will be on Ramble Source, the Ramble Source, or on X or Twitter. It'll be you'll be able to find it there. But we're gonna segue over to. I realized I didn't add my Facebook, and that is where most people we know both know are and be advantageous to put on there. And so as we uh, connect to Facebook, I just here for those tuning in, I am sitting here with my longtime friend, good friend, and once partner in crime, Diego Espino, and just talking about overcoming boundaries, overcoming stereotypes, and changing people's minds about disability.
Hmm.
But is it? But it seems like just getting to know you, Diego, is more than just disability. It's like it's changing people's stereotypes of just because do you feel like there has been some of it, like there some of this where it's not only are you a counselor who's blind, but maybe a Latino counselor who's blind. Not only,
Hmm.
it's even more rare to find a
Oh yes.
is that true? Is that just me talking out of my butt, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, as we know too, like in general, there's less male counselors, right? For one thing,
Hmm.
male therapists, and then if we get deeper into the different
Yeah.
ethnicities, or races, and different identities in that sense, like, yeah, of course.
Mm.
I think right now, currently in the my in my workplace, I think there's 5 male and there's like 50 something therapists, I think, and there's only one, I think, Spanish speaking male. That's me. um, and and again, it's one of those things that, um, I saw myself as that's a thing too, right? Like I saw myself as somebody like who, when we worked in our first school, I was like, man, I'm missing out on utilizing my Spanish, right? I mentioned it to you many times where I was like,
Mhm.
I can assist people, but I'm not in that area, right? And so that's why I pushed so hard to be moved to my other school, where I ran a group that was all in Spanish for students
Mm.
that had just arrived from different part or like different parts of Latin America or even Spain. One of my students, but it was, again, it's just like the different people who I can reach and support. I guess, there's the disability part of me, but there's also the Latino first generation, my Spanish speaking abilities. So yeah.
Well, and knowing you, some of this has come from, correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of the way you were raised. It seems like your family has been a big influence in sort of bucking the trend, being somebody who is or being, it seems like there's an identity to that comes out of your family of like, we earn what we get as far as who we are and that sort
Hmm.
of thing. We don't let other people dictate that. Would you say that
Hmm.
that has been sort of a theme in your family, or from your dad or mom? Or,
Yeah, I mean, I think my dad, is somebody that I really look up to. My mom as well. Both my dad and my mom. I believe my dad only went up to like sixth grade when he was in Mexico, and my mom, I think she completed eighth grade, something like that.
Mhm.
But my dad, I mean, just the way he would talk about experiences at work, he talks his English and he has a thick accent, but hey, he's worked 30 years, 30 some years, 31, 32 years at his current job. And
Mm.
um, I mean, he's a waiter, and just man, to hear stories from him. I remember, he works at a big hotel in Chicago downtown, and like
Mm.
he would get me signatures from soccer players who would stay there. Right, he got to meet
Mm.
Michael Jordan, LeBron James. He served President
Wow.
Clinton, I believe. He served Obama when he was a senator.
Mm.
He served all these different like big people, and my dad's like, even he sometimes surprised. Like he's like, yeah, I'm surprised, like this sixth grade person who has a sixth grade education serving these big people, well,
Yeah.
little do they know. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, my dad taught me like, hey, yeah, work hard, and something that's important for me, it's like my work ethic, right? It's like I
Mm.
need to show up. I need to show people that, yeah, I'm working hard and that I know what I'm doing, and yeah, stand up for myself, right? If I
Mm.
need to, I will.
Mhm. But I feel like at the same time, you have an interesting mix of self-confidence and humility, whereas you're very matter of fact but very kind, and I think that that has really helped you
Hmm.
in your endeavors. Just, you're not so, I mean, you could be, if I mean, I think if I were you, I'd be more arrogant. Be like, I overcame blindness, I overcame get out of my way.
Well,
But
there's, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's that aspect of just kindness, like I've come to learn, like, even when I was in college, right? Like talking to people who were in charge of, for example, people who had to give me, I would have to send them my articles, and they would like have to convert them into like a PDF that was readable for me or some kind of audio thing.
Mm.
Um, and I was really kind to them. because I was like, but I would see how other people would treat them. Like other people would treat them as if like
Mm,
they like they were paying them to like do them something, and I'm like, okay, yeah, they are getting paid. This is their job, but like still, like be kind to them. And I can tell you like, yeah, I would advocate for myself, but I'll be super kind. I'll be like, thank you, appreciate it whenever you get a chance, like.
mhm,
Or if I needed to be like, I really need this. But that's the thing. It's like because I was so kind, everybody knew my name, I knew their name, and sometimes
mhm.
I would drop the ball, and I'm like, shit, I didn't turn in all my books on time, and now I'm probably gonna be at the bottom of the list, but I wasn't. Like I was at the top of that list, and I would get my books quite early, and it was because I had this positive relationship with these people, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I come to learn like how much that pays off, right?
yeah. And you're not, but you're not a pushover. I mean, I have known you to be somebody who will
Yeah,
you will stand up for yourself and you stand up for others, and I think
yeah.
that's the counselor side in you, somebody very caring of
Oh
those
yeah.
who need extra caring, who need the marginalized. I think you have a heart for that, and not just as a counselor, but as Diego. And but you fight for yourself too. I seem to remember a story where like what was the story where there was
Which
like
one?
somebody in there was somebody, I think you like ended up hitting them with your cane or something. Can you tell me
I
that
don't
story
even
again?
remember.
Like at a club or something, and there was like a
Oh,
girl.
no, no. Well, there's many stories of which I've hit people with my cane. Like I'm so I don't know, man. Like you the way you describe me, where it's like like there would have been times where I'm at the mall, right? And like I'm just so not afraid, but I'm just like I don't want to hit people with my cane. Like I know sometimes like
Yeah.
I mean that's what it's there for, right? Sometimes it's like, I would
Mm,
accidentally hit them and in my mind I kind of think like, okay, if I hit somebody, they're gonna see that I can't see and obviously they're gonna be okay with it. And so
mhm,
sometimes I would just kind of like not do it as much, like, and not hit people, but like I wouldn't extend my cane out. And then my friends would be
mm.
walking next to me, and they're like, "No, Diego, like use it. Like that's the whole point, so that people move out of your way." And so sometimes they will grab my cane and they would like hit people in their ankles, so they would like walk to the side, and then like they'll turn around, and I'm just there like all like embarrassed, like I'm sorry, and then they're like, "Oh no, no, it's okay," and then just move out of my way. And then, my friends will be like, man, Diego, you're like Moses. You'll be partying the crowds. And I'm like, dude. But like, it's things like that, like
Yeah.
but there's plenty of fun stories that come with, just my
Tell me
friends.
one.
I'm gonna
Tell
say
give
embrace.
me one. What was that one? There
Um,
was like a particularly annoying or drunk girl that like
no, I think
you.
that one was with my friend. Oh my God. That one was one of my friends where, I was, we were at U of I and we went to, one of the bars there and me and
Mhm.
my friend were having a drink or whatnot. And then I went to the bathroom. And when I came out of the bathroom, the girl was sitting near the bar and she was like about to like I guess take a sip of her drink, but she was kind of
Uh-huh.
like she wasn't close to the bar. Her chair was a little it was kind of in the way of the path, right? And so
Mm.
when I was walking next by her, I accidentally like shoved her with my shoulder, which caused her drink to like just spill on her. And she turned around, and my friend was seeing this. Like she was seeing this from like a few steps down, and she could have said Diego, watch out, but she didn't. And then she and then I'm like, oh, I'm
Thanks a
sorry.
lot.
And then I didn't even know that I spilled the drink because I mean I couldn't see. I just kind of thought
I couldn't see
I
it.
bumped
Yeah.
into somebody. And then
Yeah.
and then my friend, like when we walked out of the bar, she was like, "Oh my God, Diego, you should have seen her face. She was so pissed." But then she saw you were blind, so she couldn't do anything because like you didn't see her. And I was like, "Why did you tell me that I bumped into her?" Or she's like, "It's okay." She had like a what did you say? She had like she had a bitch face. So I think she deserved it. I was like, "Oh my God." You guys are oh
Oh
man. But
mercy.
there's been other times where like I bump into people and
Yeah.
people just kind of get all like a little bit offensive or get and then they see
Yeah.
that I can't see and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "Why don't
Yeah.
people treat people like that? Like why can't you just be nice?"
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean that is a good question. Why
You
is it
know?
that we are more that are complete? Yeah, I mean, if somebody bumped me, I would think like, what the heck? Especially a
Yeah.
tall. You're tall,
I'm tall. You know? I
guy,
try.
strong guy. I might think like, hey,
Yeah.
who's this guy? But then I see a cane, I would be like, oh, so sorry, so sorry. Yeah, what
Yeah.
is that? What is that? Is that a
I don't know, man. Like it's when I was in college, I would do like these. I guess you could call them these social experiments, right? Because
okay, okay,
my freshman year, no, my sophomore, well, yeah, my freshman sophomore year, I still had some vision to the point where like I can walk without my cane for the most part. I mean, I shouldn't have been walking without my cane, but at the time I was still kind of struggling with like using it. And I don't know, we can
yeah,
get into that if
okay.
you would like, but like, um,
Mm,
and so I would go to like this one of the stores, one of the grocery stores, and I remember like when I wouldn't use my cane and I would be looking for like I don't know, let's say I was looking for cheddar cheese, just
okay.
and so I was in the cheese section, and I would ask somebody for help, like I'm like, hey, can you whoever was there grabbing cheese, they were doing the same thing I was, and I was like, oh hey, can you tell me which one's the cheddar cheese, um and I would like people would help me, but they'll kind of give me an attitude when I wouldn't have my cane. Like they'll just kind of be like, "What the hell's wrong with this guy?" Right? Like, and so when I would have my cane, they would even ask like, "Hey, do you?" Which makes sense, but even then, like, sometimes I would kind of have it on my side and they couldn't see it, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, can you help me find something?" And then they'll like, they'll look at me, but then they would see my cane and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, here." And I would do that multiple
Mm,
times, and I would see how much more nicer people were to me when I had my cane, right? And something I would
interesting.
tell my students when I was working at with well with you and then other school is
Mhm.
like you don't know what sometimes people are going through. What if they're, I mean, I don't know, dyslexic, or whether they just can't read, or whether they just forgot their
Yeah,
glasses that day. Like, just
yeah,
help them. Like, doesn't take
yeah,
you a lot to help somebody. Like, you don't have to give like, if it's not gonna take you, obviously it's not a burden for you, but it's like, hey, just
yeah,
oh yeah, here it is. That's it. Like the person,
yeah,
like you think about this, the person already is asking for help for anybody is so difficult, right? Like, so they already
yeah,
did a really difficult thing.
yeah. Well, and if they make a mistake in public,
Yeah.
I mean I mean everybody is affected by failure and is affected by
Yeah.
any kind of embarrassment. Well, one other thing it makes me think about is two things actually. One is we have chickens, and recently we had like a little hurricane came through. It was mostly just a storm, and
Hmm.
the neighbors also have chickens.
Yeah.
And down the road, it's actually a Latino family that lives down the road, and their chicken came and just started hanging out in our yard, and it was like for a long time, like I was trying to figure out who to talk to, because there's a couple of I didn't know which. It's like a trailer park that's across the street from
Yeah.
us, and I didn't know which. I hear the rooster, but I don't know where it is really exactly.
Okay.
And and
Yeah.
so I was trying to find out whose chicken this was, but in the meantime, I mean, I wasn't doing a great job of it. I was just kind of asking around. In the meantime, the chicken just hung out at our house, and sometimes it would be right on our doorstep. It would just sit on our
Mm.
doorstep, and we called it Nugget because that's kind of our name for like little lost or ugly animals. We always call it Nugget. But
Yeah.
later, I was like thinking it's kind of like chicken nugget too. But anyway, uh, uh, it it was a sweet little chicken, just kind of dumb and but one day I went out there and there was feathers everywhere, and because it wouldn't go in the coop,
Yeah.
it would sort of be on its own, and the rest of the chickens, my chickens, didn't really accept it. and something got it, and it was kind of amazing. It was interesting to me how much my it hit my family. Like we all
Yeah.
like we cried a little bit, and it was like just this dumb chicken, but it was a marginalized little entity, and
Yeah.
it really it thinking on it, because I was thinking, why are we so sad about this stupid little chicken? Like, we eat chicken all the time, and we called it nugget, you know. But but I think it's because we're created with like a sense of care for the marginalized. In particular, I I think that it's important for us as a society. Um, if we don't take care of the marginalized, then the society breaks down.
Hmm.
And then the other thing it made me think of was, I talked to this Native American lady, very insightful. And I asked her. She kept talking about the difference between Christianity and the tribal
Tribal. Hmm.
religion, yeah, and tribal beliefs. And I said, well, what are the tribal beliefs? And like she kind of went through the main one she talked about was generosity and taking
Mm.
care of the marginalized. And I asked her, well, where does that come out of? Because uh, for me, I feel like the desire and the sense of being tender and kind towards the marginalized, if it doesn't come out of a place of like of religion, but not just religion, because she talked about, well, it came out of a place of survival. They had to survive, and that's what
Hmm.
helped them survive. And I thought, well, what happened? And actually, I asked her, I said, well, what happened when they didn't have to survive anymore, when they were taken care of, or when things got better? Um, and she said, well, I know she couldn't really give me an answer. And I guess I thought about it, and to me, I really believe that my sense of, or I think that there is a sense of caring for the marginalized that comes out uh, of uh, the personhood of Jesus Christ. I really think,
Mm.
and I wanted to get your take. I don't really know where you are religiously
Catholic.
right now. Catholic, yeah. And
Hmm.
what do you think about that?
I
Does
mean,
that
that's
resonate with you?
in a way, right? The sense of care, of being kind and taking care of others. It in a way, yeah. My mom's, I mean, she grew up in Mexico, and she's very Catholic. And
Mm,
like me and her have conversations, and I remember, just growing up, like how much she would use I guess the catechism. Like she used to be a
mm,
teacher, and so she, would teach us all that, and just again, everything that the Catholic Bible has to say about being kind to others and taking care of those who are in need,
mhm,
and the way in which I would see my parents, help others, right? Like they would
mhm,
help others, in the sense of whether it was financially when they could, whether it was like by giving, right, making
mhm,
food, which is all these different things of how important that is to have in as a value of yours, right? And so as I got
yeah,
older, and as I was able to maybe provide in that sense for family in Mexico or even here, if I hear like during COVID there was a lot that we were able to
mhm,
do for some family in Mexico, right? Because unfortunately some over there didn't have the
mhm,
resources that we had here, right? And so again,
mhm,
there was a lot that um, I did, and my family as well. But again, I think for me it comes from that as well. You know.
mhm. Well, and I do like to get back to what we were talking about. Well, like at the grocery store, I do think there is, and well, actually, to go back to what you're saying about the teachers, there is a utilitarian idea and approach to being kind, that we can be kind to get what we need. But I don't really get the sense that that's what drives your kindness. I get the
Mm-hmm.
sense that there is a real tenderness and desire,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe from what you're talking about, maybe that comes down from your faith and your family,
Yeah.
that even though you're somebody who, I mean, who probably needs help in some ways more than others, like what, like the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
you are thinking about those that need help while you're doing your first
Mm-hmm.
thought is, what about other people that are going through a hard time?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because I have a cane, why do you treat me differently? And I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Have you put Do you see yourself that way? Have you thought about that?
I haven't thought thought about that exactly.
Hmm.
But I think I think about it more in the sense of like the opportunities that I have, like being able to see, if we, I guess, think about the opportunities that I've had, or, we can call some of them in a way privilege, but
Hmm.
like, whether being able to go to college, whether being able to, once I had my job, and yes, I worked hard for a lot of these things, but it's just like, I'm in a position where I can, help others. And, of
Hmm.
course I need help myself, but, um, for me, it's like, there's something about, being able to help others, and, when I'm able to, because I mean, at some point I'm going to need it too. Or I will need it. But even that,
Yeah,
not in the financial sense. I just, there's just a big part of me that's like, hey, no, like, you need something, I'll help.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I haven't really thought too much into, as you say, like, me needing help and helping others. But I
Well,
do, I do think
if,
about others. You know, go ahead.
no, well, go ahead. You finish. You
No,
think about
that's
others?
that. No, I was just saying, like, I do think a lot about
Yeah,
others. Like throughout my,
yeah,
I guess, my days, or whenever I hear about somebody, and like, or my parents say
yeah,
like, hey, these persons, you know, going through something, and I'm like, can I help? Right? Like, it does come
yeah.
to my mind.
Well, I think what, and I'm just sort of thinking about this now, that there something I haven't thought about you and your family that's similar to my family, is that there is an emphasis on sort of an economy or an ecosystem of generosity and forgiveness,
Hmm.
or helpfulness, at least, and that, I don't I I'd like to know more about, like, is that something that you were raised up into? Because it seems like there is a sense that
Generosity, or go
of a
ahead.
generosity and helping, and how that
Hmm.
without cultivating a life of that, not just in ourselves, but promoting it in others and living that
Hmm.
out, that, putting an emphasis on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is that something that you found in your family? And
Yeah, I mean, of course, definitely, like, generosity.
mm,
I think that's something really, you know, it's just been, in multiple different ways. It's been something that, has been instilled in us,
yeah,
by my dad, my mom. As I said, like, a lot of the things that we saw them doing growing up.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
even and I know this is a little, I guess, different, but even knowing, right, like, my dad's a waiter, right, he gets tips,
hmm,
and like, even seeing how
hmm,
much, like, when we would go to restaurants, he would tip. And just
mm,
every time I go to a restaurant, like, I think about my dad, right, like, I don't think like,
mm,
oh, is this going to be too much, is this going to be like, no, I just, hey,
yeah,
and that's something that, I don't judge others for, like, oh, you're gonna leave less than that. Like, no, like, I do it for me. I'm like, I think about who I am, and I think about where I come from, and my dad, and I'm like,
yeah,
hey, like, this
yeah.
I understand this line of job.
And people don't, well, I'll say I didn't know how complicated that never crossed my mind how complicated it is when it comes to money. Like I
Mhm.
remember you would ask me, like, Judah, I think on top is a 20 and on bottom is a five. Wasn't there? Didn't you have a situation where you once like tipped way too much because you thought it was like a different bill or something?
No, I don't think I've tipped too much. Maybe it might have happened at some point. There was a time where I pretty sure I tipped less because I thought it was a five and it turned out it
Less.
was a one.
Okay.
But
What
which I
was the
feel bad for
situation?
that. But I mean, I think I
Yeah.
tipped less. You know, I think it was like,
Yeah.
you know, I think I left like a few ones instead of fives, and I thought it was a five. But you know, and then when I got home and checked, which there's different ways to, of course, like you know, there's different. In Mexico is cool because over there the bills are different sizes, and you can they have texture
Hmm.
to it, like the coins as well. So like it's easier to you know figure out things in Mexico. But here, like well, the coins, yes, but the dollars, everything's the same. So either I gotta use an app, I kind of have them organized in my wallet, or my cousin actually gave me this really cool thing that you basically you imprint braille on it. So like you kind of like click it and it just like
Oh yeah,
it
makes
tells
like
you
a
it's a
little hole in
20.
it.
Like yeah, like a hole, but more like an indentation, like a bump,
Yeah,
basically.
bump.
So
Yeah, okay.
um so yeah, so that's pretty
Mm.
cool. I use that from time to time. I mean, but it does take that extra, you know. Let me take out the bill, click it, and put it in my wallet,
Mm.
which can be annoying at times. But whenever I, you know, whenever I can, I remember I'm like, okay, before I put this money in my wallet, I'm gonna click it, you know.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you know, I'm not. I try to be organized, but yeah, there's times where I still
Yeah.
ask like my friends or somebody who's there, I'm like, hey, is this a 20 or is this a 10? Because you know I want to make sure.
I was actually amazed how little you had to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, I have to ask, and I can see. You know, I ask more. I ask more things from my friends, but I it did sort of amaze me. And do you think that it's something that you did purposefully? That you would like challenge yourself extra? That you
um
would try not to ask as much so that you could sort of challenge yourself?
I think it's more of
Or
that part of like it's more of like that independency, right? Like if I want to be
mm,
independent and as independent as
mm,
I can be, well, I need to be prepared, right? Like that's the big part. It's like how can I be prepared, right? And in those moments in which you know I do need the support, like yeah, I'll ask, right? I mean, there has been times
mm.
too where like I think it's a 20 and I give somebody a 10 and they're like, this is a 10, and then I'm like, oh my bad, you know, like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, like I don't get embarrassed of it anymore. I mean, I don't think I ever
yeah,
really did. Maybe at first I thought I would, but now I'm just
yeah,
like, well, I mean, I just got to get more money. Like, I mean, they already see that I'm blind, so they can kind of tell. Like,
yeah,
but you know, again, like it's more like a joke. Or there has been time where like I would give a one, and it was like 20
yeah.
bucks or something, and I'm like, are you sure that's not a 20? And just make it a joke, and you know, kind of go on from there. I use humor a lot, as you know. You know,
You
it's a lot of
do.
it's
I
not
love
really
that.
a coping mechanism. It's more of a let me bring you in, right? Like let me not make you like
Mhm.
let me address this elephant in the room and not make it like awkward for people, right? Like
It's almost
you
like
know,
a coping mechanism for others.
in a
You're
way,
helping other
yeah,
people cope.
yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like yeah, you can laugh. You know, I've shared a lot of things with you at times, and you know, when we're in the 2 years
Yeah.
that we work together, or sometimes like I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I know you you would do things like clubs and things too, and like we would just laugh about things. So it just you know, I remember like you would say like you're like you would never find anything in my desk, Diego, because your desk was like all unorganized, and my desk was like, and then you'll be like,
It was immaculate. Yours was immaculate.
yeah.
I felt bad because I'm like,
You're like,
I
okay,
should
you're getting the
probably
permission
organize.
slips. They're like on
Hey, go grab the. Oh,
the
never mind.
left pile. Never mind, I'll get them because yeah,
I'm actually wearing my BAM shirt. I have a ton left. That was
nice.
probably. I want to talk a little bit about our shared experience, the BAM program, and kind of
Yeah.
what you got out of it. because I feel like I learned more in those 2 years. Um, I think the program was excellent. The ideas that came out of that, particularly the practice of sitting in a circle and checking in, and just the things that I've learned from guys, mentors, and
Of
you,
course.
and and the students as well, that has really changed the way I've thought. And um, I just think about like how different it was every day getting up and having a uniform, but the uniform being a t-shirt. you know
Yeah.
like there was just that very little thing. Sorry, I keep hitting my microphone, but just that very little thing, the subversion of ideas, like of a uniform,
Yeah.
of male, manness,
Yeah.
male approach and integration into society, and
Hmm.
our bodies and anger and all these things. What was there anything in particular that really changed the way you thought when we were in the band program, becoming a man program?
I think, I mean, a lot of things you shared, I agree, right? Like there was a lot that I learned, and I mean, I myself, right, like grew so much. I feel in those 2 years as well. Just
Mm,
I feel it was something I needed to not go. Not that I'm like the craziest of guys or whatever, but it
mhm,
was like coming out of college, right, getting my first paycheck and just kind of like my first big job and just all these things. And there was like a few things that I just like, I mean, in the cohort that I was with you, like I was one of the youngest ones. And
mhm,
just being able to hear like things that, the adults, people who were already married, just things that they would share, as
mm,
well as just like the values. I think that's something that really helped me, and just like learning like, okay, some of these values I probably already had, but just
mhm,
being able to kind of go dig a little deeper into it, right? Like the whole idea of being like, of actually taking this role as like, yeah, you're a role model, right? Not only when I'm in the school, but when I'm outside, right? And I don't know, I just really kind of took that to heart for myself, and I was like, all right, Diego, like where, because I also recognized that, there were some things in which it was like the more my behavior is aligned with the values, like the less
mm.
bad I will feel, or guilty or shame or any of that, right? Because it's like I'm living what I believe in, and
Integrity, yeah.
ever since that, I've stayed close to it. Of course, there's times, but for the most part, like I felt balanced. Yeah.
Let me see if I can remember the core values. It would be integrity,
Hmm.
self-determination, respect for womanhood. Oh, that's only three. There's three more.
There's three more. Think about it. The one that goes with
Uh,
integrity starts with an
self-determination.
A.
Tell me them.
Accountability.
Accountability, of course.
Yeah.
Accountability.
Vis,
What's
visionary goal setting.
visionary goal setting? And then there's what? One more.
And yeah, there's
One
one more.
more.
You said it
Can't think of what
earlier.
it is. I did. What is it?
Well, you kind of briefly said it about anger expression, positive anger expression.
Oh yeah, that's right. Positive anger expression. I wonder why. So then I start thinking, what? Why are those the ones I forget? Like, what are those the ones
What
I need
does
to
that
work
say?
on? What does that say? Well, there's two things that real before we've gone a long time. I'm probably taking too much of your day. I
No,
enjoyed
fine,
talking.
whenever. Yeah, I mean, dude, it's
Okay,
been a
well,
long time too. I'm whenever.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. Well, good. I don't want to. In case you have something, just tell me, June,
No,
I gotta go. Or
I'm
but
good.
there, you said it earlier. The way you said it made me think. Oh yeah, that's something I think would be good to talk about. Your perspective on, first of all, a privilege.
Mhm.
So I feel like you have a unique voice when it comes to talking about privilege, since
Mm-hmm.
you are a minority, you are you're blind.
Mm-hmm.
What what do you think about privilege? Because the way you said it made me think that you have a different, and just knowing you and talking to you, I know you have a different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know if it's so much different. Like I think obviously there's privileges that you know, as a man I have a privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, I can include, well, as a blind man, there's privileges I don't get. But I can still recognize that I am still a man, right? Like I still
Mm-hmm.
have a sense of privilege, and there was times where I can, I know that they were in play at some point. But I also recognize, yeah, I'm a minority. There's things that I maybe have a step back in. But I think my mentality is more, you know, even if I'm starting a little bit behind in the race,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of like, okay, yeah, I know there's things that I need to get over, past, or whatever, but like it's more of like, how can I prepare myself? What am I looking for for the opportunity, the support that I can get? What's in my
Mm-hmm.
surroundings, and I think for me it's just a lot of like that working hard, the ethic,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't take away the fact that, again, I understand everybody has different things, but I'm not gonna sit
Yeah.
here, like I would tell people, like I guess it's not essentially the same, but like I remember like I would tell people like, no, I'm a happy guy. I'm joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not gonna sit back and wait until there's a cure. I'm gonna waste my life. Like I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go out and
Mm-hmm.
seek everything. And of course, if tomorrow there's a magic pill that gives me my sight back, who wouldn't take it? I'm not stupid.
Right.
Like, but in the meantime, I'm gonna do whatever I can to be happy, to work hard, to help others, and yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm. But I get the sense, like from what you're saying, that we all have varying levels of privilege and disability, and we're some point in the race, but you've always been someone, and from my experience, that has taken that as not as something
Hmm.
uh to bemoan, but something to challenge you and say, like, I'm
Hmm.
still going to be happy, and I'm going to work twice as hard to overcome it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. Again, it doesn't. But because that's the only way, right? Like
Yeah.
I would tell people, like, I mean, technology has some, AI has helped so much now, right? Like now I can take a
Mm,
picture of something and it reads it to me, right? Like, maybe when
that's
I was in
awesome.
college, I didn't have that as much, right? And so it was like a lot of things that
Mm,
I had to like, you know, I had to take, extra maybe 4 steps to do the, one step that your vision does for you, right? So it's like, so there
mhm,
was like all these things and different aspects as well, like, but I had to recognize, this is the way that I need to do things for myself, and I
mm,
can complain about it, or I use radical acceptance a lot, right? Being able to just radically accept this is the way it is, and I need to get through it, right? And that helped me so
radical
much
acceptance.
throughout my life.
Mm, mm. Radical acceptance. I don't think I've ever heard you talk. Is that something that you've come to, like a sort of a phrase that you've
It's
come to
it,
embrace?
it's like Buddhist. It comes from like,
Hmm.
the Buddhism.
Hmm.
But it's, I didn't know about it, right? Like I didn't know about that until I actually went to in college. I went to one of my what was this therapist who told me, she was like, what you're describing, Diego, is radical acceptance. And then I got into it. Then I started
Mm,
looking more things. And it's basically
mm,
that, right? Like, you know one of the examples, it's like, okay, you really want to go, it's not the best example, but like you really want to go, you have plans to go outside today and go camping and go do things outside, but right as you're about to leave, a big storm comes in, right? You can either be bummed out and stay home and be mad that you can't take it, and you can't go and you can't enjoy your day,
mhm,
or you can just accept that the rain's there, and
mhm.
find something else to do while, either the rain
Mm-hmm.
goes away. Obviously, for me, and my vision's gonna stay the same or gonna get worse. But again, it's part of that. Like, no, what am I gonna do? It is what it is. I mean, that is a phrase. There's other phrases, but sometimes it's just like, it is what it is. What can I do about
Mm-hmm.
it? And how do I not allow
Mm-hmm.
this to impact me um, extremely negatively? Right.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting is I think something that always interests me is thinking about why, thinking about value and meaning. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it raining when you want to go out to. If it starts raining when I want to be outside camping, what is it that makes me feel like the gods are against me or whatever? What is it makes? What is that message that turns my attitude sour?
Yeah.
Because who's to say that rain is bad for camping?
Yeah.
What if somebody came along and said, "Hey, I love camping in the rain." How would that
Yeah.
change, radical acceptance and radical um like reframing of things.
Reframing of
We
things.
frame I
Yeah.
feel like we do. Don't you think we frame things like according to what we've been told in society or what
Mm-hmm.
we've just learned to expect,
Yeah.
and define things, a certain way. We get in ruts
Hmm.
that we form a reality that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Would And that's something I think a lot of that I learned from you and being in the band program is like just like seeing through somebody else's eyes. Sorry for the illusion. That's probably should say use something else, but like
No,
we're
that's
wearing
fine.
somebody
Yeah.
else's shoes, Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like being in somebody else's place. Like thinking through their experience.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think it's one thing to castigate and to bring other people down because of privilege, but it's another thing um, to I don't know, embolden people and encourage people and look at look at the ways we can help others, like we were saying earlier. Just helping other people,
Yeah.
whether we have privilege or not. Like everybody has privilege in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Was that what comes to mind? What are you thinking about when I say that?
Yeah. I think it's, being able to recognize that part of you. I I kind of think about, when we would sit in the interviews. I don't know if you got a chance to do the interviews. Maybe you did when you were in BAM, that you would do interviews for new
Hmm.
counselors, and just
Yeah.
being able to like ask them, the questions, and just hear sometimes them like not figuring out like, oh, there's a privilege that I have, right? Um,
Mm.
and sometimes there, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you have one privilege. It doesn't take away the other ones that you don't. That's the thing too, right?
Right.
Sometimes we feel like, well, I'm not privileged, right? Like myself, I can say, well, no, I'm not privileged. I'm blind. I'm a minority, but I recognize that, I was never hungry. My dad has a good job. Maybe I'm middle
Yeah.
class-ish or so, and you know my dad owns a house, right? Like I grew up in a loving family, two parents that are married, right? Like there's all these things that in a way do bring me some privilege, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, there are also things like I'm afraid that if we as a society mm, turn that the idea of privilege into something, privilege means something good, and if we turn it into something the bad taste in our mouth, and we say kind of how it has become, then we won't seek to build up those good things, the good things that me and you have as far as two loving parents, um, and certain societal things that lead to success. Just because other people don't have it doesn't mean that we can't lift it up as something that is good.
Mhm.
You know.
I mean, I think the importance is not seeing the privilege as bad, but more than anything, it's like recognizing it and
Mm.
viewing it as like how one has had that opportunity. Just basically well, I guess if I can make an example, right? It's like,
Mhm.
what we learn about manhood, right? In terms of,
Mhm.
we all have our lenses of what a man is, right? Like I can't
Mhm.
tell you how to be a man, and you can't tell me how to be a man because we grew up different. We have maybe some of the different values. There's some things that, maybe to me a man, and I mean I don't know, right? But like there's this sense of like, okay, I recognize that there's certain things that are important to me that maybe aren't as high in your list for you, for as to a
Mhm.
man. And of course, there's things that we share, which as we
Mhm.
do. But again, it's more of like
Mhm.
how do we each just respect each other's points of view, and not just say, it'll be ridiculous for me to say, oh, just because I'm able to do it, everybody who loses their vision and is blind can do it too.
Mhm.
Like I can't say that, I there, it's more of like there's opportunities and there's ways to go about it, but I don't know your full story. Like I don't know what other struggles you
Right.
have. I don't know how difficult, or how maybe you didn't have the support that I had, right?
Mhm.
you know I recognize
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. A friend of mine, Joe Brooks, he once, I think he had a really good analogy of truth, and that is that, like, it's dark. Everything is dark, and the information that we need, like, each of us has our own flashlight,
Mhm.
and we can just uncover the world through our flashlight. Or but if many of us get together and shine the flashlight, we see so much more of the
So
world
much more love, yeah.
as it. Yeah.
Mm,
and
I like that.
and I just feel like I've learned, quite a bit from you about consistency, organization, and being able to be. I think you're one of the only people I know who has, like, a dedication to doing things right and organized, but you're not like an a-hole about it. You know what I mean? Like, you're super kind guy who demands excellence, demands organization, but not demands in a caring kind
Yeah.
of way, but like just in just a steady example. And I
Mhm.
think that's always been something that I've really appreciated about you.
Yeah, I think I think part of that is just, our personalities, yours and mine, and the way we just kind of match, right? Like I remember, I remember like the first time that I joined, like when you were in the school first, right? And then I got there, and
Yeah,
then and then
yeah.
you were like, "Well, I'm new, and I just got here, and then this guy's new, and who's gonna teach him?" And then we just kind of slowly just kind of like each just took our roles, and like, it's like I would plan the field trips and do all these things, and you'll just, you'll in a way we're like, all right, you're my eyes and I'm the administrator here, and we'll just we just kind of wrote things out, which I think our troops were successful. We went,
Oh
taking
yeah.
them to college tours, taking them to different places, and it was just kind of like, you know what, it just worked, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
really, it was one of those things where typically, I would share that, I like in college, like, or even in other places, like I hate doing group work, right? Because I feel sometimes somebody takes, well, I guess the way I am, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm doing a lot, but like with you it was just different. It was
Mm.
like we just kind of like, it was just so easy. Like, no, yeah, you got that, I got this. Like, we know our strengths
Yeah.
and our lack of, or the places where we can work on. But rather than like pointing it out or saying like you should do this or you should do that, it was more like, hey, can you help me with
Yeah.
this? Yeah, can you help me with that? Yeah, or don't worry, I'll take care of that. Or you'll be like, I don't know, where are the permission slips? Oh, here, I put them out. Here you go. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like I never felt there was like this tension of like, oh, like he's not doing enough, or I.
Well, I think I think there was the potential because I'm a lazy guy and disorganized, but because and and like I have had run-ins with people that are more organized and more like ambitious
Hmm.
than me. but it usually it's because of judgment that I feel. I never felt judged by you. And I
Yeah.
think that encourage, it was always encouraging. I always felt encouraged by you. So
Hmm.
like I wanted to be more organized. I wanted, like I wanted
I
to
know.
work harder. I never did get organized, but you know what I mean? Like it I did I think I would work harder. Um Not because, like I feel like that's something that it's like a foundational truth that if like
Yeah.
people encourage others, they get
Yeah.
much more buy-in than if you point out negative in somebody, or if you yell at them for something they're not doing.
Of
Pointing
course.
out the negative and using negative is just so much less effective than just encouraging and expecting. I just feel like you just always sort of have a hopeful expectation of people that
Yeah.
they will be helpful, and that they will, even if they make a mistake, they'll get better. And that was something that was super encouraging and wonderful to work with.
Yeah, no, I mean, and same, it was one of those things where it was like, I remember like there was times where like, if you didn't know, I guess that you felt comfortable to ask me of
Yeah.
like, oh, are you gonna be able to do this, or do you need help with that? More at the beginning, and then you kind of just saw how I just went about things, and you're kind of like, okay, he needs help, he's gonna ask me, which makes sense, but I never felt like you were like overly like, oh, um he's gonna need all this help or whatnot. But it was again, it was one of those things where um, I laugh because like I remember that time
What?
we had when we had breakfast for the teachers and the thing caught on fire. You don't remember?
I do remember the sternos.
Mister,
I I was
you put a
trying to
napkin
light
on.
them. I tried to put it out with a napkin. It was full of like this petrol that caught on fire, and it like got on the. I think I tried pouring
The
it out, and it
table.
went on the wall and lit on fire.
Oh my god.
The whole time you're like, "What's going on? What's going on?"
Yeah, I
I'm
just
like,
see like
"Oh, I'm
lights of
lighting the
fire on
school
the
on
side, and
fire."
I'm like, what is going on? Oh my god, good times. Oh man.
You're the one who's blind, but I'm the one who's like freaking
Yeah, you're
lighting
over
the,
here
the
like
place on fire.
maybe I should have. I don't
I should
know.
just let you take care of it.
No. Yeah,
Oh
but it
man,
was
some good
no.
times. I
Yeah,
do
no.
remember. I do remember like the dark side of me. Like confession time. I was feeling like I was getting my groove, but I was looking for help. I was the only white guy in an all black school,
Yeah.
and they said you're going to get a partner. He's not
Yeah.
African American. He's blind, and he's like 23. I'm like, what? I feel like I'm drowning out here, and you guys are throwing a blind guy to me.
Yeah, I remember you shared part of that when we were talking like after some time, and we were just like laughing about it. Where like you were like, I was like, oh my god, what are we gonna do?
But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and to this day, I don't think I've ever had such a wonderful like work partnership, and I just really appreciate you, man.
No, man, yeah, same, same. It was one of those things where it was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I mean, I was nervous myself too. Like, how are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
But we just rolled it out. I mean, I personally think we did really well. We had a great connection with our students. I can see
Yeah.
it in the way you went about it with them, and just how much you connected with them, and even the way they would like seek us out, right? It's like, even
Yeah.
your students like talking to me, or my students talking to you, when they didn't have to, but they did. We kind of formed a really good group.
Yeah, I still keep track of some of them on
Yeah,
Facebook and
nice.
stuff, and I think some of them are doing really. Oh, I talked to I probably can't. Yeah, it's
No,
probably
probably not.
against the rules to say names. But I talked to one of them. He called me up. He was about to graduate, and
Nice.
he just it's just it's just wonderful to see them, successful and following their dreams, but in a way that they worked hard, for
Oh
4 years.
yeah,
This guy got
yeah,
a degree in art, and just it's like, man, yes. And, oh no, he got a degree. He was taking art. He was very good in art, but he got a degree in counseling.
nice.
And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. That he sort of he saw what we were doing, and he wants to do it too. So
Wow,
it's just
yeah.
interesting to see.
You should reach out to Bam. I'm sure they'll love to have an alum if he needs a job.
Yeah. I told him, that's exactly what I told him. I said, you need to
You
like
need
do
to,
your internship
yeah,
or something with them. They would love to have you.
yeah.
Well, brother, thank you so much for the good conversation. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure, man. Anytime, I appreciate the invite. It's been,
Yeah.
it's a long time since we kind of said we would, and now here we are. And
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, you too, brother. And to everybody who, let's see, David Kilworth. Hey man. And Milton Brendel, Aline Rangu, Jay Nass, Dr. J. Appreciate you guys all giving us a thumbs up and tuning in. And hope you got something out of this. And I know I did. So thank you. And I'll talk to you later.